So you have the comic that went out, and then how'd you do the shift into full-blown novel writing? I've discovered in my brief but lively career here that learning how to actually write a book is a lift. There's a lot that goes into a complete novel. It's not easy.
Yeah, and in my, at least in my weird way, I think the way I progressed up to the novel, which was, kind of like the white whale, even throughout all the years of writing comics and then moving into screenwriting, the novel's always hanging out there as at least for me, the ultimate accomplishment is if you could do that. And it took me a while to feel like I was ready for it. I will say that I think working in comics and then doing screenwriting was really, really useful to when I felt I was ready to tackle the novel. There's things and there's skills that you learn in having to crank out those two types of media that do serve when you get to the long form of the novel. Like, for instance, I think in comics, unless people have ever seen like a comic script, they don't really realize like the only writing that the audience gets to see that you produce is the dialogue. That's all that's there on the page is the bubbles with the dialogue in it.
Well, sometimes there's little narrative boxes. You do get that a little bit.
Little
just not
little
much.
narrative joiners, for sure.
Much. Yeah,
not much on the page, and yet the comic manuscript is, it's a conversation between the writer and the art team, So the majority of the writing that you do there is breaking down the scene panel by panel, having to describe that for the artist. So it really teaches you a lot about plotting. It really teaches you a lot about how to write words that ultimately people can see in their brain. And in the case of comics, they can see them literally in the artist's depiction of the thing. So, but the majority of the writing, 90% of the writing disappears when the product comes out because it's just between you and the art team.
Yeah, in a sense, you're
really interesting. So
you're prompting, right? You're prompting the artist, and now with AI, and it's blasphemy for a lot of the professional artists who've been flourishing for a long time, have careers, and now people are dollying their art, and they're now what is it, Mid-Journey, and there's a host of software packages where it's DIY even for graphic art.
Yeah, and this is really interesting. I mean, I haven't written for comics for a while, but I've been curious since AI really came about because, one of the obstacles, like I said, for anybody wanting to jump into comics, if they're not an artist writer, is you have to find artists that are either willing to work for free, or if you want the premium people who are going to get the attention of the publishers, you gotta pay. Yeah, but now I think with tools like Mid-Journey, you take a guy like me who can write a script. Instead of writing all of those prompts and really laboring over trying to explain and depict how I want the visuals to come to life on the page, I can just do that to Mid-Journey and maybe it'll spit out the panels. I don't know. I haven't done it, but that's my suspicion. But it focuses your attention on dialogue. Like when you write comics, you really gotta learn how to do dialogue, man, because that's the only thing that anybody's gonna see that you made. So it really it sharpens your attention on how to write compelling dialogue, at least dialogue that's going to keep people flipping the pages.
Yeah, and a well-written screenplay, similarly. There's no backstory. There's no subjective analysis of the circumstance. Basically, there's just declarative statements that describe what's being seen and the action that's taking place between the characters. And there's dialogue. That's it. A play is similar.
Yeah.
And that, to your point, is good practice.
Yeah, that's exactly
for a novelist,
right.
I think that's good practice.
I think so too. And plotting as well. I mean, you take the typical American comic, it's 22 pages of content, and that usually breaks out between like 6 and 8 scenes. So you're talking two-page scenes. So you got to be really it focuses your attention on being concise, focuses on the dialogue, making sure you hit your beats. So it's plotting, it's dialogue. I mean, like I said, it all served really well when I got to the novel. And then screenwriting too. I think the screenplay, the only difference there is that while you can dismiss mistakes in the description of the panels to the artist, that's never going to be seen by anybody. Um, those descriptions to the screenplay, that's what you're judged on, man. You're judged on the, you're not only the dialogue that you write for the characters, but also the scene descriptions for the director. Because while comics is an artist's medium, films are a director's medium for sure. So that's how you get it across the finish line. So it was an interesting transition from comics into screenwriting, and then ultimately, taking the real plunge into writing into writing long form and tackling the novel. So that's a little bit about the journey, at least that I went on. Not conventional, but it was mine.